ready to proceed? All right, I'll gavel in
Recording in progress.
the June Ways and Means Committee meeting for Brentwood. Roll call, please.
Oh, shoot. Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderwoman Parker Tice. Here. Alderman Shelton.
Here.
And I'm here too.
Alderwoman Sims. Yes, all members are present.
Item 2 is approval of the agenda. I don't know, do we need to observe the formality? Can I get a motion to delay the item 5A of the agenda until such time as our auditor arrives and is able to give the presentation?
So moved.
5A and B, or
Oh,
is he also
or
giving the
5A
update?
and B.
Yes.
So 5A and B.
Amended. So moved.
Okay, yeah. Objection approving by acclamation? Okay, it'll be so approved. We'll move along. Item 3 on the report is report of committee chair and alderman. I have no report. Alderman Gould,
No report.
Alderwoman Parker Tice. No report. Alderman Shelton.
No report.
Item 4 on the agenda is the city administrator report. 4A is the city administrator report. Take us away.
Thank you, Alderwoman Sims. At the last meeting, the committee discussed the slate coverages, the different slate coverages, and we were specifically asked to review the recommendations that were made in the Charlesworth report and compare that to our renewals over the past 2 years since the city has had that report. So I have gone through the report, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4 coverages that they give a recommendation on. The recommendations are not significant. For instance, under property insurance, they suggest that the city include our property schedule in the list. We have to provide them the property schedule in order to get a renewal. So those are things we do already. Another suggestion is that under general liability law enforcement, they suggest that that the city review our general liability schedule and make sure that it reflects any updates that in terms of typical incidents that we have, that we report it, and we do. So a good number of the recommendations they have are things that we do already. Under professional and employment practices, which is your public officials coverage, they recommend that we submit this both to Slate and the public officials insurance provider, which is AXA XL. So we do that as well. But one of the suggestions they make, particularly under public officials, is that we increase our limit from 2 million, which is what we currently have, to 3 million. So we are in the process of making all those renewals right now. And I asked Thomas McGee, how many of the, I think, 28 members have a $3 million coverage? And they tell me that out of 26, out of 26, 6 of the members had a $3 million limit, and the rest had 2 million. So if the city were to renew at the 3 million limit, our premium would be $33,110 versus $27,460. So I bring that up as maybe a discussion, and I'm told, so these are what impacts your premium. It's your past experience. And in 1819, fiscal year 1819, the city had 3 claims. In 1920, we had a fantastic year. We had 0 claims.
Everyone was sheltered in place.
Exactly. Should that happen again? And then in 2021, we had 6 claims, And in the current year, we have 3 claims so far. Typically, the claims we see are more employment-related. So when I read the coverage, issues that employers typically deal with are discrimination, time off, American Disabilities Act, disability termination, wage and hour, employee benefits, performance management, and FMLA. So the increase is not significant from, 27 to 33. So I'd like to maybe have you all, so our current premium is 25,719. So we are seeing an increase if we stay at 2 million. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that before I respond. I was probably just going to renew at the same level, but if you all would like to have a discussion about that before I provide a response to Thomas McGee.
Alderwoman Parker Tice?
So I don't have the Charlesworth report in front of me, but what was the rationale that they gave for increasing the limit to 3 million?
The city, consider increasing limits. The city turns in no claims. Just a minute here. Let me pull it up. So they say that the XL Caitlin coverage, the city has a 2 million per wrongful act for professional employment coverages, less than it carries for general and law enforcement liability. So it would seem to me that they're trying to just match the coverage limit that we have for the other two, for general and law enforcement liability. That seems to, that seems to be the rationale.
That those are 3 million, and so they just want to bump up the public official
Yeah.
to
But,
3 million.
but they also say while 2 million is consistent with other entities, increasing the limit for the public officials coverage may be worth considering, especially given the interplay between XL coverage and slate, the concern about class action coverage and the broad definition of official act. The limit is less of a concern for the employment practices coverage.
$5,000 doesn't sound like a lot of money in the whole scheme of things, and until we need it, and so
Or, 2 million coverage per occurrence seems like a lot until
until it's not.
until it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, in the scheme of things, I'm inclined, since it was recommended to us by someone that we asked to do an analysis, I'm inclined to go with it. So, in terms of, and I guess you would probably need approval from us to proceed, 'cause from a timing aspect, are these renewals
Not
happening?
necessarily, because I've been approving them all along, but I just wanted to have you all weigh in and give me your thoughts on that. So I don't know that I necessarily need approval for that.
Is there a time window that you need to
So
approval, or
let me see here. They have told me, or they did tell me, that they need a response. They didn't tell me when they need a response. It becomes effective July 1st. And typically, if a week goes by and they don't hear from me, then I get another email reminding me if I didn't miss it in my Outlook. So,
The policy renews on July 1.
July 1.
I'm with Sunny here, when they recommended.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
if you,
Sure.
I don't know if you need I
Need a
entertain a
motion? I mean,
motion to
If-
approve
I
increasing
think
the
that would,
coverage
that would
to
even
3
support it
million,
even more. So
consistent with the
Yes.
is it, I keep calling it
Charles World.
Worth,
that would be
report.
wonderful. Okay.
That sounded like a motion, and I'll make that.
I'll second it.
Okay, is there any discussion? Do you need a roll call on that? All in favor,
Voice,
say aye.
yeah,
Aye.
very good.
So
Thank
after,
you.
I'm an aye. So after all of that, the only meaningful recommendation that came out of that report was that we should increase our public officials liability.
Well, let me go back to so I was gonna bring more of this at the next meeting because we're still doing the research and I don't have all my responses
I don't
back.
put you on the spot. That's fine. I'm happy, if you want
They're three.
stick a pin in that.
They're property insurance, there's general liability and law enforcement, and there's this last one that we just did. And, some of their recommendations, we're already doing it.
Okay.
So that's my response. That would be my response next meeting. Same in terms of general liability and law enforcement. And this one is from 2 to 3. So this is the one. And, well, there's one more, auto liability, where they've asked us to confirm that uninsured motorist coverage and underinsured motorist coverage are included. So I'm waiting from Thomas McGee to get a response. So I'll bring a more comprehensive response to you all next meeting.
Okay.
Are there any other issues like this where you would want feedback before renewals on July 1st?
So I looked at the cyber security recommendation that they made in here. So we're renewing that currently, and their recommendation on that, have IT director review policy and incorporate into cyber incident response plan. I think I've reported on that I do talk to Larry Covey about that. Remember to call in the event of a cyber incident. Thank goodness we haven't had one, but we do know what the protocol is. Then watch for warranty statements on renewal application. So we do that as well. So generally, these are, I think, the 4 that I needed to respond back to you all on, and we're doing it well. Then public officials, bump it up. So that's where we are.
Okay. And as you mentioned, the next meeting in July, I'm going to be out of town that week, which is the week of July 4th. I think July 7th would be the first Thursday.
Okay, so change the meeting date?
Yeah, I don't know if now is the time to do that. I just want to give as much notice as possible. I mean,
This is helping us kind of with the time constraint we have.
So,
So this is good discussion.
I don't necessarily need to reset it now. I want to get the note up.
Maybe the committee should look at their calendars while we're here. I don't know where I put my phone. If that is a good date, and Kelly, I don't know whether you have access to Outlook to see whether there's any conflict.
So,
On the 7th is what you're saying?
so the 7th is, yeah, well, I'll be out of town. That's the regularly scheduled.
Oh, I'm in the wrong month.
The regularly scheduled Ways and Means meeting. But our meeting in July is July 18, right? Our board of aldermen. So, I mean, I'm inclined that, the week before would be ideal. And that way, if we need to review anything, it would be
Thursday before is
ready. It's the
Public
4th.
Works is 14th. So, and then Planning and Zoning is the 13th. Ward 1 has a meeting on the 12th, but,
The 13th looks good, that evening, doesn't it?
that's Planning and Zoning, isn't it?
No, that's the day after, at least on my calendar. Is that correct? Maybe not. No, it's not. Are you looking at the city calendar? Oh, then you're right.
Planning and zoning is on the 13th.
13th and then.
About Monday, the 11th,
Yeah, Monday the 11th.
What about Monday, the 11th? I'm available.
available.
Unless you want to do the 30th of June, like the week before. Okay. The
I've got a
11th,
conflict
I
on
can't do that.
So, but I can do
the 11th is open.
Okay.
my auto calendar for Board of Aldermen meetings.
So Monday,
Have it
July
Monday.
11th at 5:30?
Yep.
Perfect. So we'll send out an invite so everybody can be
Yes.
here.
I have,
Alderman
please,
Gould, you put
please,
that on
thank
your
you.
calendar right now.
I do have a conflict that I'm kind of happy to get out of, so.
Oh, okay.
You know you're being recorded.
I don't want to be, I'm not trying to be oppressive. So, we're good. And thank you all for that. So, was there anything else on the insurance issue?
Just that.
The auditor's available when you're ready.
Okay, Bola, did you have anything else
No,
to report? Okay, item 5, so great. Item 5A on the agenda is the fiscal year 2020 audit presentation.
Yep, so committee, thank you, and board management also, thank you for the opportunity to work with the city. So to give you guys some perspective on 2020 audit, typically our process for completing an audit, helping assist with the preparation of the financial statements, reviewing account reconciliations, although the scope of work that we were engaged to do was beyond just the normal account reconciliations because of the support that was needed. That's usually a 5 to 6 month process. There were a lot of long nights and weekends, and we were able to cram this in about 30 to 40 days. So I want the committee to understand the speed at which CLA was able to work through the financial statement preparation, the account reconciliations, as well as the financial statement audit work for 2020 in order to meet S&P's 30-day deadline. So I'm going to walk you guys through the 2020 audit results, as well as timing for 2021. So the scope of our services, and maybe I'll stop and ask the committee, how much do you guys know about governmental financial statements, and how can I tailor this material to help educate you so you can understand the materials that are included within our report?
Andrew, I think typically the focus more so is on not necessarily helping them understand governmental accounting, but your overall assessment of the audit and if there are findings or not findings.
Okay. And it would help me tailor the materials and go into more depth into areas and to further elaborate on maybe some of our recommendations. But I will go through these materials. I guess the committee, if you have questions, stop and ask me, and I am more than happy to explain further. So the scope of our services is we did a financial statement audit, as well as we did accounting assistance that allowed us to stay, and financial statement preparation that allowed us to stay independent so we could still render an opinion on those financial statements. We are complete with the 2020 audit. We met S&P's 30-day timeline, and the signed report was provided on Friday, May 27th. Our audit approach is a risk-based approach. We also focus on areas of lower risk. The significant risks include areas such as taxes, property tax, sales tax, gross receipt taxes, as well as grant-related revenue, specifically MSD's grant revenue for BW Bound, in addition to the CARES funding that was received in 2020. In addition to that, there's areas of significant estimates as it relates to investments and various other pension and OPEB related liabilities and obligations. Areas of estimates are an area of significant elevated risk because they just pose a higher risk for error in those financial statements. So I'm going to walk through basically our required communications. The first piece that I'm going to discuss is corrected and uncorrected misstatements. So uncorrected misstatements are misstatements that we deemed not to be material to the fund and or government-wide financial statements. And these uncorrected misstatements all related to 2019, items that were discovered while performing the 2020 work. We did not want to go back and restate 2019 because of the potential delays that it caused in issuing the 2020 report. So when we were doing our audit work over sales taxes, it was identified that sales tax receivables in the prior year were overstated by $82,000, causing current period revenues to be understated by the same amount. In addition to that, errors were identified in the police and fire pension report that caused a misstatement in your pension obligation. It was understated by approximately $711,000. We've communicated these errors to the actuaries. So these are items that remained uncorrected because we wanted to expedite the results of the 2020 audit. Now, there were corrected misstatements that were identified during the course of the audit, items that typically would have been corrected through management's normal processes that were identified while we were doing the audit, or items that we would expect Rana to identify while she was doing her account reconciliations. So maybe the area that was of biggest issue that we encountered during the audit were transfers between funds. Largely, these are transferred from the economic development, general funds, to the TIF funds or your debt service funds. While we're trying to reconcile all these accounts, there was various instances where inter-fund transfers were recorded on one fund, not recorded on another. As a result, $167,000 of transfers activity was incorrectly recorded within the debt service funds, and those were adjusted as a result of the audit. In addition to that, distributions of investments for Brentwood Library were incorrectly recorded to fund balances, which you should really never be posting adjustments to fund balances. That was a misstatement of approximately $1.34 million. There were additional errors that we identified during the review of the police and fire pension report during the current year, causing pension assets actually to be overstated by $234,000. As a result, an adjustment to reduce pension assets was recorded as a result of the audit. In addition, we recorded adjustments to adjust the financial statements from a fund balance to a government-wide balance, things that I believe Rana was supposed to be handling, but were not taken care of. So capital assets, long-term debt, pension and OPEB obligations are example of some of the other adjustments that we were required to record in order to make sure that the financial statements were not materially misstated. So those are some of the indications of the corrected and uncorrected misstatements. As we went through the audit, there was no indication of fraud or illegal acts, so that's a positive. Regarding adoption of new standards, there was one new GASB that was implemented in 2020. That was related to the presentation of the police and fire plan. It really wasn't a significant change, but something that was required to be adopted in the 2020 year. On the horizon for 2022, there is going to be, in 2023, there is going to be a fairly large GASB that's going to be on the horizon that I really suggest is not delayed or not pushed off, because it's not something that's going to be able to be expedited like we did with this recent GASB. And this is related to recording of lease liabilities, as well as leases where you might be leasing to another organization. What all this means relates to corrected and uncorrected misstatements is that we did identify material weaknesses and internal controls. We'll provide a letter to management as it relates to the items that we identified. So that's the gist and a quick summary of the results of the 2020 audit. I'll stop if there's any questions from the committee. If not, I can move to 2021 and talk about that timing.
Are we going to be able to put in checks so whatever the
Yes.
statements were
So-
aren't going to happen again?
So typically, the letter from the auditor about what they have found needs to be in writing. And so before this is presented to the Board of Aldermen, I will ask that that be presented to the city so it can be part of the package going to the board. That typically is part of that. So as he was reviewing it, you all could look through it as well. And so once I see what those material weaknesses are, then I'll have a conversation with Robin and Gina to make sure that we don't have those occurrences happen again. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah,
Because
and
I
then-
do know we have financial policies, and maybe that corresponds to where the weaknesses are, that we weren't completely following those.
And well, I'll elaborate on a couple of other things. We do have a formal report that we give to those charged with governance. I will send that to you guys this week. There is also a letter that goes directly to management that outlines our findings. As from my perspective, the internal controls are designed. They actually, you do have good policies and procedures. Gina has done a good job with those. And I want to acknowledge the level of work that Robin put in to making sure that 2020 got done. Robin put in a lot of time and a lot of effort to try to make sure that 2020 was executed. It's important for the committee to keep in mind that in 2020, there was turnover and changes in management, which is causing these internal controls that were designed not to actually operate because there was no one to actually perform those internal controls.
I think we acknowledge that, and we should also acknowledge the countless hours that Robin has put in, because this was a heavy lift, given the fact that, we brought someone in and then the person left, and then we had someone that it's the perfect storm, and we went through it. So big thanks to both Robin, Gina, and Andrew, especially, and his firm, for truly delivering like they said they would, because it was critical where Standard & Poor's was concerned. So, initially we submitted the draft document thinking that would be sufficient. And then they came back and said, we would like draft removed and it'd be final. So I communicated that to Andrew, and we got it late afternoon on Friday and sent that in. And at the same time, we got our bond counsel to upload the same document to what is called the EMMA website, EMMA, where all those who invest in the city's certificates of participation go to see what the city's financial statement looks like, find out what the city's revenue situation is. And so we were constantly updating that so that everybody knows. So I want to acknowledge that because that's big. And I'm hoping that because we now have all our positions filled and hoping that those who we have in those positions feel satisfied with City of Brentwood being the employer of choice, that we don't have vacancies, at least in the immediate future, because when you have vacancies, that's when things like this happen. I know that we have a neighboring city who had 100% turnover in their finance department as well. So their audits are late. And so it's a domino effect when things like that happen. And if you recall, last summer, we also had that in our planning department. So it's been a challenge, but I'm happy where we are. But I think you'll hear from Andrew what the schedule will be for the 21 audit. Andrew, is that a good segue for you to start?
Yeah, I think,
Well,
I mean,
just 1 second. Well, first, yes, thank you everyone for all the hard work. And I guess we otherwise, I mean, going forward, provided that we don't have employment turnover, and that can't be helped. I mean, do we have? Or, I mean, are we gonna, once we kind of sort of clean it up going forward,
That's
we should
the
be,
plan.
Be able to do this in a timely and
Timely
orderly
manner.
manner.
So, Robin, do you want to speak to that?
Good evening. Yes, we have had turnover. However, I'm not going to say that that is the one factor. It is also education, training, support, and really setting the standards and expectations during the interview process. I feel like I've been here almost a year, and I told Bola, yes, I'm still in an interview. There were goals and accomplishments and a lot of heavy lifts that she was very transparent about during the vetting process for me. And I don't ever want to feel complacent and like I've made it until, well, not ever, but we can't coast. The finances of the city are just too important. Finance impacts everything that we do operationally because without the funding, you can't get anything done. I believe in continuous education and training, not just the education that staff come with, but also teaching them and building up on their skill set. Sometimes you have to sacrifice someone who has all the bells and whistles for the personality, knowing that they're willing to come in and that they're willing to listen and learn the ways of Brentwood. I worked for the city for 12 years. It's very different working for the city of Brentwood. So just because you know municipal government and municipal finance doesn't mean that you know the inner workings of every muni there is. And we have, 91 munis. Everybody does something different. But when you tell people that, they say, no, you do the same thing. No, there are policies and procedures, and there are also processes and our financial policies and procedures, internal controls, how we do things. And I am a stickler for rules. I don't want to be in a position to make a judgment. If it's already there, basically, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. I believe in uniformity, consistency, how we do our processes every day. I try to train the staff where they really do understand and they feel comfortable, and just keep an eye on them and make sure that they're learning and they're growing and that they're also following the policies and procedures. So while turnover does hurt, it's still important to have the right people in the position. So you want to retain staff, but you also want to make them feel like they're growing and developing. I think about it when I'm on my ride into work. All the things that we do in the initial first months of a new employee's training impacts their career. And the guess, the trajectory that you set for them. If you want to bring a clerk in and just have them cut checks, that's all they're going to learn how to do. For me, it's important in a small department that everybody has a role in everything. Not so much that they would do my job, but they would know parts and pieces of it so that it is not that difficult for them to understand the impact of the daily work. The last thing I want to say is, you can lead a department, yes, it's true. However, it's the daily work of the staff that really rolls up into the audit and the financial statements. So it's making sure that every bank deposit is right and recorded. Every check that we cut, we are following the financial policies and procedures, getting our signatures. If a CRA is required, making sure that we're keeping copies of documents. I want to move to a more scanning environment, but those are things that we have to do as we go on. It's the baby steps to make sure that people really understand and are comfortable and can do their jobs independently and competently, that is going to lead to the future success. And it's not going to happen overnight, because we've been here before, not before I got here, but clearly based upon some of the information that Andrew delivered tonight, how 2019 affects 2020, and so on and so forth. And I just want to be very transparent and say that I'm not really expecting much of a change, a huge change for 2021, because I only had 5 months tenure. So you got to get in and you got to learn, you know, what people do. You got to learn your job and how you play into it. But I do have great expectations for 2022.
Comment, I guess, Bola, if there's something you need from us to make sure that itches don't become heart attacks, I mean, I don't know how else to frame it in terms of, I mean,
Description.
if it's,
Yeah.
you know, having periodic updates, if there are issues with, you know, particular continuing learning, we're all ears. I mean, we just want to make sure that,
Right.
you know, you've got what you need to get it done.
I think this has been a good start, updating you every time there's a meeting on the status of how we're progressing with these audits. And so we'll continue to do
Yeah.
that. And if I see other things that we need to bring to your attention, I'll send a communication to all of you prior to a meeting so that you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's so elaborate on a couple of things that Robin said. You know, 2021 is going to be another heavy lift for CLA in helping the committee or the city get to where they need. After this year, we're essentially going to transition all the documents that we've used to prepare account reconciliation, so it's easier for the city to follow and to mimic going forward. You know, a lot of the city's transactions are routine and very similar from year to year. So I think for 2022, as Robin alluded to, you're going to be set up for success. And that's my overall goal here, is to help get you out of this bind and help the city move forward so they can stand alone and get their internal controls and over financial reporting to the point where they need to be. And I'm confident, especially with Robin's hard work, that they'll be able to get there. Also, when you think about 2020, it was a perfect storm of management turnover as well as third-party consultants that simply just did not provide for the city.
Not to put our treasurer on the spot, but I'll put our treasurer on the spot. Keith, I see you up there. Do you have any questions or comments? I just wanted to be sure and recognize you if you did.
I mean, my only question was 700,000 passed. That seems like a lot of materiality to.
Yeah, no, I mean,
that, and then for 21, is there going to be a single audit? Do you know?
So, you know, those are really good questions, Keith. So the $700,000 impacts the government-wide financial statements. The government-wide financial statements are full accrual, so we had higher materiality. But yes, it gave me a heart attack because it was just below our materiality level that would not require misstatement to the prior period financial statement. So I don't know if we actually would have gotten there to have that May 27th deadline if I had to restate 2019.
Okay, and when I heard you describing it, I thought to myself, well, if this is on just strictly inside the pension fund, there's no way there's enough materiality, so this has to be on the government wide. But
right,
I just kind of wanted to confirm confirm that. And then since this audit wasn't done under Yellow Book, I guess,
Correct.
if they have a single audit in 21, you'll have to do Yellow Book. Are there any concerns that you have about the control structure having to issue a Yellow Book audit?
That's a good question. How much BOLA and CARES money was expended in 21? Do you know off the top of your head? In 20, it was about 270,000.
I believe we will probably have to do a single audit for 20, I'm not certain. I don't want to
So,
speculate. I'm not certain.
Keith, and the committee, I'll give an update as to the scope of the 21 audit, if a single audit's going to be required or not. For the committee's understanding, a single audit is if you expend, I emphasize the word expend, over $750,000 of federal expenditures in a given year, then you are required to have an audit done of those expenditures. So for example, you guys have probably received the American Recovery money, but you might not have identified how you're going to spend that. You would not be required to have a single audit until you've identified what purpose and what programs those funds are going to be used for.
So it would be more grants that we would have gotten for street projects, related to maybe the MoDOT street project, along Manchester. I don't think that we worked on any pedestrian improvement projects in 21. We're currently working on Russell, and we won't start spending a lot more of that money until the end of this year, fall, than next year. So it's probably doubtful that we would do one for 21, but definitely 22. But I guess when they start to delve into that more, we'll find out.
Yeah, that's all I had. I just was sitting here wondering about those aspects.
Oh,
So
those are really good questions.
Great, thanks, Keith. Did you have anything on the 2020 audit, or were you ready to move on to 2021? Or does
No,
the committee have any questions on the 2020? Not seeing any. So I guess we'll go forward to 5B, progress on the 2021 audit report.
Right. So we just concluded 2020. The timeline that I've shared with Robin is that our team has effectively started on Tuesday, going through and reconciling working capital. When I say working capital, that's accounts receivable. That includes accounts payable, general accrued liabilities, those things that our team is working through as we speak. The one item that Robin and her team are working through as it relates to account reconciliations is finalizing bank account reconciliations for the year end December 31st, 2021. Robin's communicated a deadline of that of June 16th. It's important that that deadline's hit in order for us to finalize our reconciliations over accounts payable, accounts receivable, because cash obviously impacts multiple areas, probably every area, and in the fund financial statements, and most areas in the government-wide financial statements. So with that in mind, we are reconciling and going through and compiling those recs and providing those to management so they can make a decision. That is occurring effectively June 1st. And then that will hopefully conclude, and I'll continue to update the committee if there's any changes to this deadline by June 30th. And then once we have all the account reconciliations done, prepared, which is expected to be June 30th, July 1, we're going to start on the financial statement preparation. That's expected to last 2 weeks to about July 15th. And then kind of at that same time, or early July, right after the 4th, we're actually going to start on the financial statement audit. That financial statement audit usually lasts about 6 weeks. And then there's going to be a quality review process at the end to hopefully conclude the 2021 audit by August 31st. I know that, you guys had in mind the June 30th deadline, and that was what the initial target was before we started digging into all this. I will want to reassure the committee that an August 31st deadline really is consistent with industry standards and really shouldn't cause any heartache. And if you are required to have a single audit, the deadline for the single audit is September 30th. So that's still 30 days in advance of that deadline.
Okay. Are there Any questions? All right, seeing
Looks like
none.
Keith has a
Okay,
question.
oh, Keith, yeah. Go
I
ahead.
just want to make sure that someone at the city files financial statements with the state or requests an extension of the June 30 deadline, just so that you guys are not showing as, being late. They don't have to be audited financial statements, just even internal financial statements can be sent off to the state by June 30th to keep you guys in compliance with the state auditor's office. Just kind of throwing that out there to make sure someone did that.
Thanks for the reminder. Good.
Thanks, Keith. Okay, I think that there aren't any other comments on that section. I guess we'll move on. Thank you, everyone. Item 5C is the financial statement fiscal year 2022.
Good evening again. I believe this time I provided a PDF for the revenue and expenses. Okay, just wanted to make sure. So I'll start tonight's presentation referencing the memo to BOLA to just give an overview. Tonight, I will present the April 2022 financial statements, along with the variance analysis as of the end of April 30, 2022, and give some explanations for over and underspending. So the threshold that I want to talk about in terms of percentage for revenues, we should have, through the fourth month, be showing about 34% of revenues being collected. With that being said, general sales tax is doing very good based upon that because 56% of the budget has been collected. So I kind of want to go back and just talk about revenue projections. So when I did the revenue projections, you all know that I was fairly new. And so while it looks good, and it is good, it's always good, some of these numbers may not have been realistic, as you can see, because we're performing very well, which isn't a bad thing, but excuse me, when we do revenue projections this year, they'll be more in alignment with what we actually expect to receive based upon history and not just, I guess, guesstimates based upon the historical pattern that I saw when I first got here, if that makes sense.
I beg to disagree with that because I know that when the mayor was chair of Ways and Means, we followed, historical patterns, and it was the direction of the board to be more conservative.
Correct.
So that's what this reflects. It's not a guesstimate.
Okay. Well, that works for me, Bola, because I would want to be more conservative.
I tend to still agree with that philosophy of
Okay.
just that revenues are going to be,
Right.
to be
Well,
conservative with that. 'Cause
yes.
You never know.
Yes, well, thank you,
They tend to
Bola.
be close when
Right.
we've been conservative rather than, reacting to a year when everybody was spending money over the holidays.
Okay.
So that was the philosophy behind that.
So we're fine with using the conservative principle. I like that.
Right.
Because I don't want to be standing up here explaining why we're at 56% on one line. But that looks good because that means that we are starting to rebound from some of the pandemic issues that may have been related to revenues for the city. And included in that would be the use tax. We're still getting robust online retail purchases. Municipal fire sales tax is performing well. Alderman Shelton, you had a question last month about the permits and licenses. If you will note, those renewals are stronger, and we're having some reclassifications, and we were able to get more of those reports in alignment with the bank statements. So I hope that helps this time around, and I expect to continue to see that line increase as we work with planning and development to make sure that the timing with the credit cards match what's in the bank. So overall, not a real big change, but we are at 65% of collections through the first 4 months of 2022 for general fund revenues. Any questions there?
I have a quick question.
Oh, right ahead.
Maybe this is for Bola too, but I'm just curious, is the use tax or other cities seeing that have it approved this robust?
Yes, so we were conservative on that too.
Right.
And what we saw was significantly higher than that. But then also, Pat Kelly has shared with us that there has been change in legislation where we were sharing 15% of what we collected. Now we're keeping, I think, 98% and paying 2% of that for administrative cost for managing the collection. So
Our take is larger.
our
now,
take
too.
is larger,
Great.
yes.
And then I did want to mention some of the minor sources of revenue. Expect to see an increase in that line as we start to build back residents for trash cleanup, grass cutting, and weed removal. I'm happy that the staff and planning has started that process back up because we were missing those sources of revenues since I've been here. The next fund would be the Capital Improvement Fund. And revenues are steady in the first 4 months of 2022 with 64% of 64% collections there. And interest income is still less than what we expect to receive. Maybe that number will increase. Any questions there? But overall, revenues are steady for the capital fund. Economic Development Fund, we have collected so far this year 1.3 million, and they are strong and steady. Stormwater and Parks Improvement Fund. What is interesting to note with this fund in particular is the amount of grants that are coming in for the Brentwood Bound project. I sent Bola an email. Right now, what we're trying to do is reconcile the revenue and have it all in one revenue account line instead of in multiple places with descriptions, so we'll know in total how much grant funding we have, not have it grouped by source. I think that would be more usable for us when it comes to that source of revenue. But overall, revenues are slow and steady, but that's only because of the lag in the Brentwood Bound grants that we receive. Any questions there?
Alderman Gould.
Yeah, I have a question as it relates to park permits and room rentals. Seems like those have continually been said, well, it's decreased because of the pandemic, effect of the pandemic. What are we doing to promote the region to come and rent our facilities, and what can we be doing to make sure that though that trend of decreasing starts to increase now that people are actually out? Because it seems like the ice rink revenue is strong, but
Right. I think it's, we had vacancies there, and the marketing person, if you remember Amber, who was our superstar, was
yeah,
always.
she was great.
Yeah, she was great. And so we filled the position, and Eric tells me that that person has started contacting all of those, the churches that would meet there, families that would have repasts, and other events. So it's gradually coming back, and
Okay.
they know who to contact and how to promote it, and it's in our, I think we, out of the members of the park, PARC, the park membership, we are the only city that still publishes a brochure. So we are contacting all of those who used to rent the space, and they're gradually coming back. And it's a matter of feeling comfortable, with the situation at hand. And we do allow those who use the space to still wear masks if they want to. So I think we will get there. Eric also reminds me that last year, they added to the fund balance about 300,000. So generally, that fund is a high performer, and I think we'll see him get back to that.
Okay.
So I'm not particularly worried.
Okay.
I expect that would happen.
Perfect. That's what I was hoping to hear.
The last fund is the sewer improvement fund. Pretty much even. We have assessments and, collections at 28,000 with a budget line of 148,000. We expect to collect the full 148,000. Any questions over revenue? Now to move to expenses. So overall, for the general fund, we have expended 4.5 million of the 12.3 million that was approved in our 2020 adopted budget. I'm not going to spend your time going line by line, but I want to talk about a few of the specific departments. Administration, we're running slightly below. We've had some reductions in payroll, of course, due to turnover of some long-term employees who were at higher salaries, and also a decrease in miscellaneous contractual expenses. And that even is over last year because we are no longer using a lot of the consultants to perform work in the finance department. The next line I want to talk about would be the municipal operating department. Expenditures are on target for the first 4 months of the year, running about average, doing a good job with budgeting and making sure that expenses are actually charged to the right budget line. Fire and police, there's a slight increase in expenditures in the fire department with 63.5% of the budget remaining, which I really wanted to spend, I plan to spend just a little bit more time after talking about fire and police to focus on streets and sanitation. That's an area of concern because, as you can see, both of those departments have roughly the same amount of their budget remaining for expenses. And when I did a deeper review, a lot of that is in salaries. There's a lot of turnover in those two departments. And so sometimes there's a lot of overtime expended in those budgets to make up for the turnover or the staff reduction. So I just wanted to bring that to the committee's attention.
In addition, if I could add the vacancies that we are filling because of how the private sector is paying within those classifications, we're finding that in order for us to bring new people in, we're having to make an offer at the 5th step, rather than before it would be step 1, step 2, and now increasingly those who are accepting our offers, we're having to bring them in on step 5. So that's also a contributing factor to that. You know, in the past, we talked about the vacancies that we have in the sanitation division and how we've been using our CDL eligible employees in streets. I believe that we now have just 1 vacancy left, and Jason was telling me that we're waiting for that person to accept the offer. So we're close to that, but we're also talking to the city's compensation consultant to see what other changes that we can implement mid-year, like maybe effective, it'd probably have to be July, after July. So we'll be bringing those to you all at the next meeting.
Alderwoman Tice?
So along that same line, I know streets and particularly sanitation are issues with employee turnover. Are there other departments where this is an issue?
I don't believe so. So in finance, we've filled all those positions recently. Planning, we're fully staffed there. I know that in the maintenance workers, the janitorial workers in the recreation center, we can't seem to keep those individuals longer than maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks when they get another offer and leave. So it's a revolving door there. So yeah, we're still going through that in Parks and Rec.
So is that another area that should be looked at, sort of, I know,
Right.
like, everything's gonna get looked at, and I would
Yes.
imagine we're gonna have increased salary expenses just
Right.
because of the nature
Right.
of what's going on in the world, but is that one that should be looked at earlier?
So just this week, Jason and I met with Eric and Dan to discuss that because Linda came in to town to have a more robust discussion with Jason. So there's going to be a call scheduled in the next week or so, and we're going to be discussing that some more. So yes, we are looking at those.
Because we need to keep the people we need to
Absolutely.
keep the people we have. 'Cause
Absolutely. And you know, the danger that's out there now is that other communities, when they're looking to fill some of these vacant positions, and they know you have people, they will call. And their cities are offering more, just nab a good person. So I've been talking to a few department directors where we've had challenges in, keeping those people there. What do we need to continue to do to make the city of Brentwood an employer of choice for those who might be interested in going to the private sector where they're getting, signing bonuses, and that's not something that we offer. But we're talking to McMahon Berger, we're talking to Kevin O'Keefe to see what other incentives that we can bring to you all for consideration.
I'm sort of, with the way the world is going right now, I think anything we can do to keep
Right.
our employees and reward them
Right.
for what they're doing is a good investment.
Thank you.
Okay, the last department in the general fund that I wanted to talk about, because it's the opposite of the rest, would be planning and development. Doing very good with their budget and expenses. Through the first 4 months of the year, they have 72.3% of their budget remaining. Although it's a small budget, it's still, I think, worth noting. Any questions about the general fund? Next would be the capital improvement fund, 75.6% of the budget remaining through 2022. Expenditures are slightly below expected. I do expect to see some increases as we continue with approved budget purchases. There are a lot of budgeted items that have not yet been expended as of April 30th. Economic Development Fund expenditures are running average during the first 4 months of the year. Now Brentwood bound, the expenditures are average, but there's more activity related to Brentwood bound, so that's why that percentage remaining looks so high as we come closer to doing a lot of the bigger projects for Brentwood bound. And lastly would be the Sewer Improvement Fund. Expenditures are slightly below budget. However, I expect for the full budgeted amount to be expended by December 31st of this year. Any questions? Thank
Nope.
you.
Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 6, which is the consent agenda. Has everyone had an opportunity to look at the proposed minutes from April and May of this year? Any objection to approving those minutes by acclamation? Seeing none, all right, they'll be so approved. We have no old business, which is item 7 on the agenda. We don't appear to have any new business, which is item 8. Do we have any citizen comments? Either, I see no one in person, but perhaps virtually. My new favorite way of doing this Seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned. I have been practicing not